Hi there, and welcome back to Out There, a Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, TJ, and on the first of every month, I come out with new episodes about the paranormal that I find spooky and weird. If you're not sure what the paranormal is, it's anything that cannot be explained with conventional science. For our purposes, that means any event, location, or creature with mysterious happenings is on the table. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at Out There Paranormals and TikTok at Out There Cryptids to see the posts we make for each episode and give us suggestions for what you'd like to hear. Don't forget to check out our other shows, Out There Cryptid Podcast and Out There Unexplained. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts. Welcome back, everyone. If you missed last month's announcements, we have officially started an Out There Discord server. This is a place where the community can come together and discuss episodes, theories, and even give us suggestions for future episodes. We might be expanding the Discord server in the coming months to include more features and interactions for all of you, so be sure to check it out. This episode also marks the beginning of our ocean-themed month. Each episode that releases this month will be centered around the seven seas and the mysteries that it may be hiding. Today, we will be talking about a ship that carries a luxurious yet haunting past. A ship where you can stay the night with lost souls and dine with spirits. We are talking about the Queen Mary. Let's dive in. Construction on the Queen Mary had begun in 1930, though it was only a year later when construction had to be halted. The Great Depression had begun taking its toll and no one was safe, not even the Cunard Line, a British ocean liner company that established the first transatlantic mail service. The Queen Mary, also known as the Grey Ghost, and her sister ship, the Queen Elizabeth, were to be the first luxury ocean liners the Cunard Line had built. However, neither would be finished until Sir Samuel Cunard obtained a loan. For this loan to be granted, Cunard Lines had to merge with another British ocean liner company named White Star Lines, the same company that built the Titanic. In 1934, the Queen Mary would be completed. However, it wasn't until May 27, 1936 that she would take her maiden voyage, departing from Southampton and arriving in New York just 5 days later. When World War II started, Allied leaders decided the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth ships could be used as troop transports. They were the largest ships of their time and soon would be sent to Sydney, Australia, where they would help carry Australian troops to Europe to aid the war effort. Over her time as a troop transport ship, the Queen Mary would carry the likes of Winston Churchill, who praised the ship and said if it wasn't for the Queen Mary, the war probably would have gone on for another year. Though, through all of her praise, there was one event around this time that would scar the Queen Mary forever. On a foggy night in 1942, the midst of World War II, the Queen Mary was transporting 15,000 troops through the Irish coast. The captain was ordered to proceed with evasive maneuvers to evade any Axis U-boats in the area. The Queen Mary would eventually catch up to her escort ship, the Krakoa. But through the fog, she was hard to spot. Ernest Watson, a seaman on board the Krakoa, had spotted the Queen Mary. He watched as she came closer and closer, then realized the bow of the Queen Mary was headed straight for him. He screamed the terrifying words, "She's gonna ram us." And soon she did. A loud boom and metal scraping metal was heard across both ships. Within seconds, the Queen Mary had cleaved straight through the Krakoa, and the Queen Mary was under strict orders to carry on and leave behind any survivors. Of the 430 souls above the Krakoa, only 99 survived. After the war, the Queen Mary would be fitted back into a luxury vessel. Her last voyage would be her 1001st. On Halloween Day, 1967, the Queen Mary would set out for Southampton one more time and arrive in Long Beach, California, where she resides to this day. She was turned into a floating hotel and eventually bought by Disney in 1984. The Walt Disney Company was set to turn the Queen Mary into an attraction that would be part of Disney Seas. However, in 1992, Disney had decided against the idea and instead built Disney's California Adventure. The city of Long Beach would regain possession of the ship in 1993, and the ship has been undergoing much-needed and urgent repairs ever since. This brings us to the present day. But don't worry, there are plenty of spirits aboard the ship that we haven't even touched yet. Officially, only 47 deaths have occurred aboard the Queen Mary. While most of the recorded deaths aboard the Queen Mary are the causes of sickness and natural causes, there are 2 souls with a darker fate. There are reportedly 150 ghosts aboard the Queen Mary, so we're going to tackle this episode a little differently. Instead of going through a list of the most prominent spirits, we're going to look at the most active areas on the ship and talk a bit about each spirit seen there. First up are the pools, more specifically the first-class pool. Due to specific California codes not being met, the pools aboard the Queen Mary have not been active for some time, at least physically. Spiritually, the area is restless. Visitors report the smell of fresh chlorine, sweat, and water coming from the pool and changing rooms, despite it being many years since they've been used. Wet footprints can also be found trailing the edge of the pool. Many spirits can be seen around the pool, though many are not named. A woman wearing a tennis skirt descends the stairs to the pool. A well-dressed boy, a little girl in an old white and blue dress, and a bride who often sits or wanders the poolside. Shadow figures, as well as organless rising steam and disembodied voices, are common. But the famous spirit of the pools lives in the second-class pool room. Her name is Jackie. Officially, there is no record of any children passing away aboard the Queen Mary. This has made the story around what happened to Jackie more of a rumor, but there are 2 prevailing theories for Jackie's cause of death. The widely believed legend is that Jackie drowned in the pool many decades ago. The second is that she fell while playing on the pool handrails and broke her neck. Despite which story is believed, it's often unanimously accepted that Jackie stuck around because she loved swimming and didn't want to pass over just yet. The bowels of the ship are the home to many more spirits. A little girl holding a doll and wearing an old-style dress, captains that wander the halls, and one particular spirit of a crew member that met a tragic fate. July 1966. The watertight doors in the depths of the Queen Mary were always locked at the same time every night. An 18-year-old unnamed crew member was wrapping up for the day and prepping for the hatch doors to lock. He began making his way out of what is now called Shaft Alley when he reached hatch door 13. His crewmates had gone ahead, but when 5 minutes had passed and their final crew member hadn't emerged, they went looking for him. He was quickly found, trapped between the watertight doors. His crewmates freed him and took him to the nursing rooms aboard the ship, but it was too late. The boy had passed away. The number 13 in many cultures is seen as a bad omen. Many hotels and hospitals to this day will not have a 13th floor or 13 numbered rooms. Maybe it wasn't a coincidence that hatch number 13 was the one that took his life. Tours held aboard the Queen Mary often hold a memorial for this crew member on the anniversary of his death. 3 years in a row, they have asked him if it was okay to hold the memorial, and each time they were met with the response, yes. This same crewmate can often be seen wandering Shaft Alley and will sometimes stop and ask guests if they have seen his wrench. These same guests will occasionally attempt to find him soon after, but will just be met with empty halls. There is another spirit that can be heard in the Queen Mary's depths. Sometimes called Henry, this spirit is one of the very few rude haunts on the ship. He can be heard on audio devices after tours, telling guests and tour guides to get out. He sounds older, so some have determined he must be an old ship captain, but we don't know anything for sure. Lastly, we come to the everyday rooms of the ship, but there are 3 that I would like to focus on. Room B340 is the ship's most haunted room. When the Queen Mary was originally a cruise liner, this was actually 3 separate rooms, and they were all combined into one when she was converted into a hotel. During the cruise liner's operation, a man named Walter J. Adamson was found deceased in the room. Officially, it was declared natural causes, but no one knows for sure what his cause of death really was. One legend says that during the 1960s, 2 women were found murdered aboard the ship. Once the crew found who did it, they locked the man in what is now B340. At night, he could be heard pounding on the door and screaming that there was something in the room with him. When the guard went inside to check on him the next morning, they found him deceased and torn to pieces. Guests who have stayed in stateroom B340 have experienced sporadic knocking on the door to the room, a bathroom faucet that will turn on at all hours of the day, and one woman even had her covers pulled off and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. Due to an overwhelming amount of negative reports and reviews from room B340 during the 70s, the room was closed to the public. It stayed this way for 30 years before it was eventually reopened to the public and advertised as a haunted attraction. Next room we're going to talk about is the Mauritania room. This room is now used for parties, banquets, and so on, but it used to be a lounge. This room has one big story connected to it, and it has many witnesses to back it up. In 1989, 2 crew members were cleaning the Mauritania room for an upcoming event. When they arrived, they noticed a man sitting on a chair in the middle of the floor. They approached him and asked him politely to leave, but the man didn't respond. They proceeded to clean the rest of the room around him. Eventually, a 3rd crewmate joined them, and they noticed the man as well. This 3rd crew member tried talking to the man, but still he didn't respond. She suggested calling security, and just after doing so, all 3 women watched the man as he slowly faded out of his chair. Each of the women reported the same thing with little to no differences in their stories. The last room we're going to talk about is the Mayfair room. Back when the ship was operational, this used to be the beauty salon. Oftentimes, the spirits of women can be seen traveling through what is now the Queen Mary offices. One accounting worker had come in early for her shift. When she sat down, she felt as if something was wrong, and she had this cold chill that stayed around her. She started her work, and after a while, felt someone brush against her chair. She turned to see who had come into work, but no one was there. She was alone. Minutes after this, she saw a lady in white cross the room and pass through a doorway. Now, before we move on to Reddit experiences, there are a couple more deaths I need to mention that aren't particularly associated with a specific area of the ship that we've mentioned. You may have noticed that I haven't mentioned the second accidental death yet. Well, back when the ship was traveling across the Atlantic, Senior Second Officer William Stark had decided he wanted to drink some gin for the trip. No one is quite sure how, but he had apparently drunk cleaning fluid that had been stored in the gin bottle. There are no reports on why the bottle was filled with cleaning fluid or how the man didn't notice, but it may be the most mysterious death aboard the Queen Mary. Another is the story of a chef who was shoved into an oven and killed after Australian troops didn't like his food. This, to my knowledge, has not been confirmed, as records of deaths during the Queen Mary's troop transport days are sealed. Now, I have found a few Reddit stories for you, because everyone loves a good Reddit story. User Shrimp Fried Ass posted this to the r/paranormal subreddit 2 years ago. If anyone is unfamiliar with the Queen Mary, it's basically the Titanic, but was built in the 30s, and obviously did not have the same fate as the Titanic. It eventually permanently docked in San Diego and was used as a hotel. Because of COVID, though, I think they permanently closed it down. It's a beautiful ship and pretty much the closest thing to the Titanic. You should really check it out online. Anyways, when I was 12 or 13, me, my grandma, and my cousin stayed on the Queen Mary for a night or two. The ship is apparently haunted because of how many people died on the ship during its prime days, mostly due to traveling passengers catching sicknesses and dying on board. We were told about ghost sightings and were recommended the ghost tour by the receptionist, but my grandma is religious and scoffs about anything like that. The night that we checked in, me and my cousin went to bed early while I explored the ship. It was pretty dead, and I was basically the only guest wandering around the ship. It was eerie, because it wasn't even that late at night. Forgive me, I'm unfamiliar with the actual terms for each specific deck. I went outside to the top deck and just walked around for a bit, and then suddenly I felt someone was near me. I had this urge to get away from it, so I started walking in the other direction. For some reason, my instincts are telling me to run, so I did. After running to the other side of the ship, I turn around and see someone. It was a man. I assumed he was an employee, but after looking closer, he was wearing very old clothes. Like clothes from that time period that the Queen Mary was an active running ship. He had a mustache. And call me crazy, but he had a green aura to him. Like he was glowing a subtle green. I know how crazy it sounds, but I swear this is what I saw. I then saw actual employees on the ship and walked towards them, and then went back to my room. I always considered myself religious, and never even entertained the thought of spirits or ghosts, but that night had me questioning. Maybe because of my beliefs, he, the spirit/ghost, was naturally drawn to me. Maybe he wanted to be seen. I don't think it was a living employee, because they wore modern-day uniforms, and he was wearing old clothes. Also, he was glowing. I don't know how else to explain it. This is the only report about a glowing ghost that I could find on the Queen Mary. Although glowing apparitions aren't uncommon around the world, many people from different cultures have come out saying that they have seen spirits that glow with a faint colored light. In some spiritual beliefs, having a green aura is associated with love or self-love. Oftentimes, this is interpreted as someone who is kind towards others and generally everything as a whole. That being said, why did this user feel the need to run? Certainly someone who potentially radiates love wouldn't also give you a feeling of dread and a primal urge to run. Perhaps auras work differently on the other side of the veil. This next post is by user GothicLG on the r/paranormal subreddit. It's quite a long one, so strap in. Some possibly irrelevant background. I never learned to swim as a child out of pure childhood stubbornness. I won't learn to swim as an adult because I think pools are nasty. Some more relevant background. One of my regular hauntings at home is a 9-year-old boy. Due to a huge difference in hand size, I know this spirit was completely uninvolved in this story. I didn't expect to experience anything when I paid the $30 fee to do the haunted tour of the Queen Mary. I really wasn't expecting to experience anything on the tour. I figure a lot of these tours just like to play up the history of these places and, in cases like with the Queen Mary, like to play up on the long history of natural and accidental death that happened to happen on that particular piece of land or metal. Most of the tour was pretty uneventful and passed quietly, as our rather quirky tour guide walked us around and told us about the history and hauntings around the ship. He shared stories about some of the deaths and some of the hauntings that had been reported to staff over the course of the years as more and more people took these tours. Overall, it was very interesting and very informative. Over the course of the nearly hour-long tour, there was a lot of history that came into play, and it was incredibly informative. There were 3 kids, who I'm guessing were somewhere between 5 and 8, though I'm not great with kids' ages, that were on the tour as well, but were really, really well behaved. So well behaved, in fact, that I had completely forgotten they were there at many points as the tour happened. The last stretch of our tour centered around the pool deck, where the quirky tour guide had the most stories to share, which included seeing people lounging by the pool and people seeing wet footprints appearing on the pool deck despite not seeing anyone on the pool deck to make them. Not to mention the fact that, for legal reasons, the pool had been drained years before. He brought up a little girl named Jackie, who tended to haunt the pool deck. There was nothing showing a young girl with the name Jackie had boarded the ship at any point, and no record that a little girl named Jackie had died on the ship. This didn't really seem to be entirely shocking, since it could be easy enough for a busy ship hand or two to just forget to record her name in any records, or for her to possibly be smuggled on board the ship in a trunk so no one would notice the extra passenger on board. Doesn't seem completely absurd when you consider this was a luxury liner on par with the Titanic. During this section of the tour, I had my back to a display showing pictures of the ship's past, where no one could possibly sneak up on me, and the 3 children on the tour were not only within easy view, but on the other side of the tour group, with their families. The guide had moved on from Jackie to discussing the hauntings of the engine room, when I feel a small child's hand grab the pointer finger, middle finger, and thumb of my left hand. My right hand was recording the tour. I can link YouTube videos of the tour for anyone interested, and begin pulling me back in the direction of a bar which was located behind me. The direction I was being pulled would have had me pulled through the display to head into that direction. I'd guess the age of the child that grabbed me was around the age of 5. At the end of the tour, I ended up asking how old Jackie was reported to be, since the guide hadn't given us an age while discussing her. And he said her reported age was between 5 and 10. Judging by the hand size, I'll guess she was 5. But having a child pass so young is horrible. I feel like the poor little thing didn't get as much life as she deserved, and feel even worse when they're haunting an area. Many more pieces of evidence are posted over on sites like YouTube. The crying of a child in the first-class pool room, the outline of a spirit sitting in a chair, and countless EVPs. Some of these clips will be posted on our Instagram, so please go check them out. With many conflicting reports and sealed records, it's hard to say what really happened on the Queen Mary. For many of us, many of these deaths will long remain a mystery. Unless, of course, you take a visit to the Queen Mary and ask the spirits yourself. So what do you think? Are the ghosts aboard the Queen Mary really out there? We are on Instagram at OutThereParanormals, that is paranormal with an S, so be sure to follow us and give us all your thoughts on the things we cover and what you'd like to hear next. It would mean a lot to us if you go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. It's a great way for others to find the podcast and enjoy it, just like you. Be sure to check out our other shows, Out There Cryptid Podcast and An Unexplained Podcast, if you haven't already. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts. 1 month from today, I will be covering a battlefield where over 7,000 Americans lost their lives in just 3 days. A battlefield where the scars of the past can still be heard and seen to this very day. We will be talking about the Gettysburg Battlefield. See you next time. This episode was written and hosted by me, TJ, with logo designed by Jason Zykes and Josh, and theme music from purpleplanet.com.